From the very first breath you take, a clock begins ticking inside you. It is not a clock you can see, it is not a clock you can hear, but it is relentlessly precise, and it never, not even for a single second, stops counting. Every cell in your body carries this invisible timepiece, and every moment of your existence, whether you are sleeping or running or laughing or crying, that clock moves forward. This is the story of human aging, one of the most complex, fascinating, and profoundly universal experiences that every single person who has ever lived has shared. It is a journey through biology, through history, through cutting-edge science, and through the deeply personal transformations that shape what it means to grow older. No one escapes it, no one outruns it, and yet, for all of its certainty, aging remains one of the least understood processes in the entirety of human science. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching this documentary and what time you are watching it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos. Now, let us begin. The process of aging does not begin when you first notice a wrinkle in the mirror or feel a twinge in your knee. It begins far earlier than most people realize. In fact, the biological machinery of aging activates in your mid-20s. That is not a typographical error. By the time you are 25 years old, your body has already begun its long, slow decline. Your cells start to replicate a little less efficiently. Your collagen production begins to slow. The peak of your physical existence, in the strictest biological sense, has already passed. This is a humbling reality. While society often treats people in their 20s as if they are at the very beginning of their lives, biology tells a different story. The body has already begun to change, quietly and imperceptibly, setting the stage for the decades of transformation that lie ahead. One of the most fundamental mechanisms behind aging lies in a structure so small that it cannot be seen without powerful magnification. These structures are called telomeres, and they sit at the ends of your chromosomes like the plastic caps on the tips of shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, these telomeres get a little bit shorter. When they become too short, the cell can no longer divide properly. It enters a state called senescence, where it essentially stops functioning but does not die. It lingers, taking up space, releasing inflammatory signals, and contributing to the gradual deterioration of the tissue around it. This shortening of telomeres is one of the most well-documented hallmarks of aging, and scientists have been studying it for decades, searching for ways to slow it, halt it, or even reverse it. The connection between telomeres and aging was illuminated by a discovery that earned its researchers the Nobel Prize. In 2009, Elizabeth Blackburn, Carol Grader, and Jack Szostak received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their work on how chromosomes are protected by telomeres and the enzyme telomerase. Telomerase is the enzyme that can rebuild telomeres, effectively resetting a portion of the cellular aging clock. However, in most human cells, telomerase is not active. It is switched off, which means the telomeres continue to shorten with each division. Cancer cells, interestingly, have found a way to reactivate telomerase, which is part of the reason they can replicate indefinitely. This paradox that the key to cellular immortality might also be the key to uncontrolled cancer growth has made the science of telomere extension one of the most delicate and carefully studied areas in all of modern medicine. But telomeres are only one piece of the puzzle. Aging is not caused by a single mechanism. It is an orchestra of biological processes, all playing simultaneously, each contributing its own notes to the symphony of decline. One of the most important of these processes involves something called oxidative stress. Every moment of every day, your cells produce molecules known as free radicals. These are highly reactive molecules that are generated as a natural byproduct of metabolism, the process by which your cells convert food into energy. Free radicals are unstable, and they careen through your cells, damaging proteins, lipids, and even your DNA. Your body has defense mechanisms against this damage, antioxidants that neutralize free radicals before they can cause too much harm, but over time the balance shifts. The damage accumulates faster than the body can repair it, and this accumulation of oxidative damage is one of the driving forces behind the physical changes we associate with growing older. Your skin, which is the largest organ in the human body, is one of the most visible battlegrounds of this process. As you age, the production of collagen and elastin, two proteins that give skin its firmness and elasticity, declines significantly. By the time a person reaches the age of 40, they are producing roughly 1% less collagen per year. This may sound like a small amount, but over the course of decades, the effect is dramatic. The skin becomes thinner, drier, and less resilient. Wrinkles form, sagging occurs. Age spots appear as melanin production becomes irregular. The skin's ability to heal itself slows down. A cut that might have healed in a few days during childhood can take weeks to close in an elderly person. The skin is, in many ways, the autobiography of a life lived, and every line and mark tells a story of time's passage. Beneath the skin, the musculoskeletal system undergoes its own profound transformation. Starting around the age of 30, humans begin to lose muscle mass. This process, known as sarcopenia, accelerates as the decades pass. By the time a person reaches the age of 80, they may have lost as much as 50% of the muscle mass they had in their prime. This loss of muscle is not merely cosmetic. It has profound implications for mobility, balance, and independence. Falls become more dangerous. Simple tasks like climbing stairs or carrying groceries become increasingly difficult. The loss of muscle mass is accompanied by a corresponding decrease in strength, which can reduce a person's quality of life dramatically. Regular exercise, particularly resistance training, has been shown to slow the progression of sarcopenia, but it cannot stop it entirely. Time in this regard is undefeated. The skeletal system itself changes as well. Bones are not the static, unchanging structures that many people imagine them to be. They are living tissues, constantly being broken down and rebuilt in a process called bone remodeling. In youth, the rate of bone formation outpaces the rate of bone resorption, leading to increasingly dense and strong bones. But around the age of 35, this balance shifts. Bone resorption begins to outpace bone formation, and bones gradually become less dense and more porous. This condition, when it becomes severe, is known as osteoporosis, and it affects hundreds of millions of people worldwide. Women are particularly vulnerable to osteoporosis after menopause, when the decline in estrogen levels accelerates bone loss. A hip fracture in an elderly person is not just an inconvenience, it is a life-threatening event. Studies have shown that a significant percentage of elderly individuals who suffer a hip fracture die within a year, not from the fracture itself, but from the complications that follow, including infections, blood clots, and the devastating effects of prolonged immobility. The heart, that tireless engine at the center of your chest, is also subject to the effects of aging. Over the course of a lifetime, the human heart beats approximately 2.5 billion times. Each of those beats pushes blood through a vast network of blood vessels that, if laid end to end, would stretch over 60,000 miles. As a person ages, the walls of the arteries become thicker and stiffer, a process known as arteriosclerosis. The heart has to work harder to pump blood through these increasingly rigid vessels, which leads to an increase in blood pressure. The heart muscle itself undergoes changes, becoming slightly enlarged and less efficient at pumping blood. The maximum heart rate decreases, and the heart's ability to respond to physical exertion diminishes. Cardiovascular disease remains one of the leading causes of death among older adults, and the changes that aging brings to the heart and blood vessels are a major contributing factor. The brain, perhaps the most extraordinary organ in the human body, is not immune to the ravages of time either. The human brain reaches its maximum weight around the age of 20, and after that it begins a slow process of shrinkage. By the time a person reaches their 70s, their brain may have lost as much as 10 to 15% of its original volume. This shrinkage is not uniform across the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for complex decision-making, planning, and personality, is one of the areas most affected. The hippocampus, which plays a crucial role in forming and retrieving memories, also shrinks significantly with age. These changes are associated with the cognitive decline that many people experience as they grow older, including difficulties with memory, attention, and processing speed. But the story of the aging brain is not entirely one of decline. While certain cognitive abilities diminish with age, others can actually improve. Crystallized intelligence, which encompasses the knowledge, skills, and wisdom accumulated over a lifetime, tends to remain stable or even increase well into old age. Vocabulary, for example, continues to expand throughout a person's life. The ability to synthesize information from diverse sources, to see patterns and make connections, often improves with experience. This is why many of the world's greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders have produced some of their most profound work later in life. The aging brain is not simply a diminished version of its younger self. It is a different kind of brain, one that has traded speed for depth and novelty for nuance. The connection between aging and neurodegenerative diseases is one of the most intensely studied areas in modern science. Alzheimer's disease, the most common cause of dementia, affects tens of millions of people worldwide, and the risk of developing it doubles approximately every 5 years after the age of 65. The disease is characterized by the accumulation of amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles in the brain, which disrupt communication between neurons and eventually lead to their death. Despite decades of research and billions of dollars in funding, there is still no cure for Alzheimer's disease. The treatments that exist can slow the progression of symptoms in some patients, but they cannot halt or reverse the underlying disease process. The search for effective treatments and ultimately a cure remains one of the most urgent priorities in biomedical research. Sleep, something that most people take for granted in their youth, undergoes significant changes as a person ages. Older adults tend to fall asleep earlier in the evening, wake up earlier in the morning, and experience more frequent awakenings during the night. The amount of deep, restorative sleep, known as slow-wave sleep, decreases substantially with age. This stage of sleep is critical for memory consolidation, immune function, and physical repair. The reduction in deep sleep that accompanies aging may contribute to many of the cognitive and physical changes that older adults experience. Insomnia becomes more common, and sleep disorders such as sleep apnea increase in prevalence. The relationship between sleep and aging is bidirectional. Poor sleep accelerates the aging process, and the aging process disrupts sleep. It is a vicious cycle that researchers are working hard to understand and interrupt. The immune system, which serves as the body's defense against infection and disease, also deteriorates with age in a process known as immunosenescence. The thymus, a small organ located behind the breastbone that plays a crucial role in producing T cells, begins to shrink after puberty and continues to atrophy throughout life. By the age of 65, the thymus has been largely replaced by fatty tissue, and the production of new T cells has declined dramatically. This means that the elderly immune system is less capable of mounting effective responses to new infections and less responsive to vaccines. This is one of the reasons why older adults are disproportionately affected by infectious diseases such as influenza and pneumonia. The immune system also becomes more prone to making errors, attacking the body's own tissues in autoimmune reactions and failing to eliminate cancerous cells before they can proliferate. The decline of the immune system is one of the most consequential aspects of aging, and it underlies many of the health challenges that older adults face. Inflammation plays a central role in the aging process, so much so that scientists have coined a term for it, inflammaging. As people age, there is a gradual increase in chronic, low-grade inflammation throughout the body. This is not the acute inflammation that occurs when you cut your finger or catch a cold, which is a healthy and necessary immune response. Inflammaging is a persistent, systemic smoldering of inflammatory activity that damages tissues and organs over time. It has been implicated in virtually every age-related disease, from cardiovascular disease and diabetes to cancer and Alzheimer's disease. The sources of inflammaging are varied and include the accumulation of senescent cells that release inflammatory molecules, changes in the gut microbiome, the breakdown of cellular waste management systems, and chronic infections that the aging immune system can no longer fully control. The gut microbiome, the vast community of microorganisms that inhabits the human digestive tract, undergoes its own age-related changes. In youth, the gut microbiome tends to be diverse and rich in species that promote health and proper immune function. As a person ages, this diversity often decreases. Certain beneficial species decline in number, while potentially harmful species may increase. These changes in the gut microbiome have been linked to increased inflammation, decreased immune function, and even changes in brain function through the gut-brain axis, the bidirectional communication pathway between the digestive system and the central nervous system. Researchers are investigating whether interventions aimed at maintaining or restoring a healthy gut microbiome could slow certain aspects of the aging process, and early results are intriguing. Vision is another area where the effects of aging are keenly felt. Presbyopia, the gradual loss of the eye's ability to focus on nearby objects, typically begins in a person's early to mid-40s. This is caused by a hardening of the lens inside the eye, which makes it less flexible and less able to change shape to focus on close-up objects. This is why so many people in middle age find themselves holding books and menus at arm's length before finally giving in and getting reading glasses. As aging continues, the risk of more serious eye conditions increases significantly. Cataracts, a clouding of the eye's lens that impairs vision, affect more than half of all people by the age of 80. Glaucoma, which damages the optic nerve and can lead to blindness, becomes more common with each passing decade. Age-related macular degeneration, which affects the central part of the retina and can severely impair the ability to read, drive, and recognize faces, is the leading cause of vision loss among older adults. The gradual dimming and narrowing of a person's visual world is one of the most poignant aspects of aging. Hearing loss follows a similarly relentless trajectory. Presbycusis, the medical term for age-related hearing loss, is one of the most common conditions affecting older adults. It typically begins with a decreased ability to hear high-frequency sounds, which is why older people often have difficulty understanding speech, particularly in noisy environments. The tiny hair cells in the inner ear that convert sound waves into electrical signals are gradually damaged and destroyed over time, and unlike some animals, humans cannot regenerate these cells once they are lost. By the age of 75, approximately half of all people have some degree of hearing loss. The consequences of hearing loss extend far beyond the simple inability to hear. It has been linked to social isolation, depression, cognitive decline, and even an increased risk of dementia. The world of the aging person can become quieter and more solitary, not by choice but by the inexorable workings of biology. The endocrine system, the network of glands that produces hormones, undergoes dramatic changes with age. Hormone levels fluctuate throughout a person's life, but the changes that occur in the later decades are particularly significant. In women, menopause represents one of the most dramatic hormonal shifts. It typically occurs between the ages of 45 and 55, and it is marked by a sharp decline in the production of estrogen and progesterone by the ovaries. This decline brings with it a host of symptoms, including hot flashes, night sweats, mood changes, and sleep disturbances. It also has long-term consequences for bone health, cardiovascular health, and cognitive function. In men, testosterone levels begin to decline gradually starting around the age of 30, decreasing by approximately 1 to 2% per year. This gradual decline, sometimes referred to as andropause, can lead to decreased muscle mass, reduced bone density, changes in body composition, decreased libido, and fatigue. The endocrine changes of aging affect virtually every system in the body, and they are a major focus of research into the biology of growing older. Growth hormone, another critical player in the body's hormonal orchestra, also declines significantly with age. Growth hormone is produced by the pituitary gland, and it plays a vital role in cell repair, metabolism, and body composition. Production of growth hormone peaks during adolescence and then begins to decline at a rate of approximately 14% per decade. By the age of 60, many people are producing only a fraction of the growth hormone they produced in their youth. This decline has been linked to increased body fat, decreased muscle mass, reduced bone density, and changes in skin texture. Some researchers and clinicians have experimented with growth hormone supplementation in older adults, but the results have been mixed, and the treatment carries potential risks, including an increased risk of certain cancers. The kidneys, those remarkable filtration organs that sit on either side of your spine, also show the wear and tear of time. After the age of 30, the kidneys begin to lose approximately 1% of their function per year. The number of filtering units in the kidneys, called nephrons, decreases, and the remaining nephrons become less efficient. Blood flow to the kidneys decreases, and the kidneys become less effective at filtering waste products from the blood, concentrating urine, and maintaining the body's fluid and electrolyte balance. By the age of 80, many people have kidney function that is only 60 to 70% of what it was in their youth. This decline in kidney function has implications for drug metabolism, blood pressure regulation, and overall health. Medications that are cleared by the kidneys may need to be given in lower doses to older adults to avoid toxic accumulation. The liver, the body's great chemical factory, is more resilient to the effects of aging than many other organs. It has a remarkable capacity for regeneration, and even in old age, the liver can repair itself to a degree that most other organs cannot. However, the liver is not entirely immune to the passage of time. Blood flow to the liver decreases with age, and the liver's ability to metabolize drugs and other substances slows. This means that medications may take longer to be processed and eliminated from the body, increasing the risk of side effects and drug interactions. The liver also becomes less efficient at producing certain proteins and at clearing toxins from the blood. While the liver may age more gracefully than some organs, it is not exempt from the universal process of decline. The lungs tell their own story of aging. With each passing year after the age of about 25, the lungs lose a small amount of their capacity. The tissues of the lungs become less elastic, the muscles of the rib cage stiffen, and the alveoli, the tiny air sacs where gas exchange occurs, become enlarged and less efficient. The maximum amount of air a person can inhale and exhale in a forced breath, known as the forced vital capacity, decreases steadily with age. The amount of oxygen that can be transferred from the lungs to the blood also diminishes. These changes mean that older adults often experience shortness of breath during activities that would not have winded them in their youth. The lungs become more vulnerable to infections, and the recovery from respiratory illnesses takes longer. For those who have smoked, the effects of aging on the lungs are dramatically accelerated, compounding the natural decline with the devastating effects of chronic exposure to toxic chemicals. Metabolism, the rate at which the body burns calories, slows down as a person ages. This is due to a combination of factors, including the loss of muscle mass, hormonal changes, and decreased physical activity. Basal metabolic rate, the number of calories the body burns at rest, decreases by approximately 1 to 2% per decade after the age of 20. This means that if a person continues to eat the same amount of food and maintain the same level of activity, they will gradually gain weight. This age-related weight gain tends to concentrate around the abdomen, leading to the characteristic increase in waist circumference that many people experience in middle age and beyond. Abdominal fat, also known as visceral fat, is particularly harmful because it surrounds the internal organs and releases inflammatory chemicals that increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. The relationship between aging and cancer is one of the most critical and complex in all of medicine. Cancer is fundamentally a disease of aging. The risk of developing cancer increases exponentially with age, and the majority of cancers are diagnosed in people over the age of 60. This is because cancer arises from the accumulation of genetic mutations in cells, and the longer a person lives, the more mutations they accumulate. the body's ability to repair damaged DNA and to identify and destroy potentially cancerous cells also declines with age, further increasing the risk. The immune system's diminished capacity to conduct surveillance and eliminate abnormal cells means that cancers that might have been caught and destroyed in a younger person can take root and grow in an older individual. Understanding the connection between aging and cancer is essential for developing more effective prevention strategies and treatments. DNA repair mechanisms are among the most critical molecular processes that deteriorate with age. Every day, the DNA in each of your cells sustains tens of thousands of damage events caused by free radicals, ultraviolet radiation, environmental toxins, and even the normal processes of DNA replication. In youth, the body's DNA repair enzymes are highly efficient at finding and fixing these errors, but as a person ages, these repair mechanisms become less effective. Errors in DNA accumulate, some of which can alter the function of important genes, including genes that regulate cell growth and division. This accumulation of unrepaired DNA damage is thought to be one of the fundamental drivers of both aging and age-related diseases. It is a slow erosion of the genetic blueprint that guides every function in every cell. Cellular senescence, the state in which cells stop dividing but do not die, is another key player in the aging process. Senescent cells accumulate in tissues throughout the body as a person ages. While the initial entry into senescence may serve a protective function, preventing potentially damaged cells from continuing to replicate, the long-term presence of senescent cells is harmful. These cells secrete a cocktail of inflammatory molecules, growth factors, and enzymes collectively known as the senescence-associated secretory phenotype, or SASP. This cocktail disrupts the surrounding tissue, promotes inflammation, and can even drive neighboring cells into senescence. The accumulation of senescent cells has been implicated in a wide range of age-related conditions, including arthritis, atherosclerosis, diabetes, and neurodegenerative diseases. Researchers are currently developing drugs called Senolytics, which are designed to selectively kill senescent cells and thereby slow or reverse certain aspects of aging. Early results in animal studies have been remarkably promising, and human clinical trials are underway. Autophagy is a word derived from the Greek language, and it means self-eating. It describes a process by which cells break down and recycle their own damaged or dysfunctional components. Think of it as the cell's internal housekeeping system. When autophagy is functioning properly, it helps maintain the health and efficiency of cells by clearing out the debris that accumulates as a natural byproduct of cellular activity. However, as a person ages, the rate of autophagy declines. The cellular housekeeping system becomes less efficient, and damaged proteins, dysfunctional organelles, and other molecular debris begin to pile up inside cells. This accumulation of cellular garbage impairs cell function and contributes to the decline in tissue and organ performance that characterizes aging. Fasting and caloric restriction have been shown to stimulate autophagy, and this is one of the reasons why dietary interventions are being explored as potential strategies for slowing the aging process. Caloric restriction, the practice of reducing calorie intake without causing malnutrition, is one of the most robust and well-documented interventions for extending lifespan in laboratory animals. Studies in yeast, worms, flies, and mice have consistently shown that reducing caloric intake by 20 to 40% can extend lifespan by as much as 30 to 50%. The mechanisms behind this effect are complex and involve the activation of stress response pathways, the enhancement of autophagy, the reduction of inflammation, and the improvement of metabolic health. Whether caloric restriction has the same life-extending effects in humans is still an open question, as long-term studies in human populations are extraordinarily difficult to conduct. However, short-term studies in humans have shown that caloric restriction leads to improvements in many of the biomarkers associated with aging and age-related disease, including blood pressure, cholesterol levels, insulin sensitivity, and inflammatory markers. The science of epigenetics has opened an entirely new window into the understanding of aging. Epigenetics refers to changes in gene expression that do not involve alterations to the underlying DNA sequence. These changes are mediated by chemical modifications to DNA and to the histone proteins around which DNA is wound. One of the most important of these modifications is DNA methylation, the addition of small chemical groups called methyl groups to specific locations on the DNA molecule. As a person ages, the pattern of DNA methylation across their genome changes in predictable ways. This discovery has led to the development of what are known as epigenetic clocks, mathematical algorithms that can estimate a person's biological age based on the methylation pattern of their DNA. Remarkably, the biological age predicted by these epigenetic clocks does not always match a person's chronological age. Some people are biologically older than their years, while others are biologically younger. Understanding the factors that influence the rate of epigenetic aging is one of the most exciting frontiers in aging research. The concept of biological age versus chronological age is one that has profound implications for how we think about aging. Chronological age is simply the number of years a person has been alive. Biological age, on the other hand, reflects the actual condition of a person's cells, tissues, and organs. Two people who are both 70 years old chronologically can have vastly different biological ages. One may have the cellular and physiological profile of someone much younger, while the other may show signs of accelerated aging. The factors that influence biological age are numerous and include genetics, lifestyle, diet, exercise, stress, sleep, social connections, and environmental exposures. The development of accurate measures of biological age is crucial because it could allow individuals and their healthcare providers to identify accelerated aging early and intervene before disease develops. Genetics plays a significant but not overwhelming role in determining how a person ages and how long they live. Studies of twins have estimated that genetics accounts for approximately 20 to 30% of the variation in human lifespan. This means that the majority of the factors that determine how long you live and how well you age are not written in your DNA. They are shaped by your behaviors, your environment, and your choices. However, there are certain genetic variations that have been consistently associated with longevity. Variants in genes involved in DNA repair, stress response, inflammation, and metabolism have all been linked to exceptional longevity. Studies of centenarians, people who live to be 100 or older, have identified several genetic signatures that appear to protect against age-related diseases and promote healthy aging. These genetic discoveries are helping researchers understand the biological pathways that are most important for longevity and are providing targets for potential therapeutic interventions. The study of centenarians and supercentenarians, those who reach the age of 110 or beyond, has yielded fascinating insights into the upper limits of human lifespan. The longest verified human lifespan belongs to Jean Calment of France, who lived to be 122 years and 164 days old. She was born in 1875 and died in 1997. Her exceptional longevity has made her a subject of intense scientific and public fascination. What set her apart? Was it genetics, lifestyle, luck, or some combination of all three? Studies of her life reveal that she was physically active, maintained social connections, and had a generally positive outlook on life. She reportedly ate a diet rich in olive oil, drank modest amounts of wine, and enjoyed chocolate. While her genetics almost certainly played a role, her lifestyle factors were also consistent with what researchers have identified as protective against premature aging. The concept of the blue zones has captured the imagination of both scientists and the general public. Blue zones are geographic regions where people live measurably longer, healthier lives than the global average. These regions include Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Nicoya in Costa Rica, Icaria in Greece, and the community of Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. Researchers who have studied these populations have identified several common factors that appear to contribute to their exceptional longevity. These include a plant-based diet, regular physical activity that is integrated into daily life rather than performed as a separate exercise routine, strong social connections, a sense of purpose, stress reduction practices, moderate alcohol consumption, and a commitment to family and community. The blue zones demonstrate that while genetics matters, the way people live their lives, the food they eat, the relationships they maintain, and the communities they build can have a profound impact on how long and how well they live. Diet is one of the most intensely studied and hotly debated factors in the aging equation. While there is no single diet that has been proven to dramatically extend human lifespan, certain dietary patterns have been consistently associated with better health outcomes and increased longevity. The Mediterranean diet, which emphasizes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, olive oil, and fish, has been shown in numerous studies to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. The traditional Okinawan diet, which is rich in sweet potatoes, green vegetables, soy products, and small amounts of fish and meat, has been associated with the remarkable longevity of the Okinawan population. What these diets have in common is an emphasis on whole, minimally processed foods, an abundance of plant-based nutrients, and a relative scarcity of processed sugars, refined grains, and highly processed foods. The emerging field of nutritional gerontology is working to identify the specific nutrients, dietary patterns, and eating behaviors that most effectively promote healthy aging. The role of protein in aging is an area of active research and some controversy. While protein is essential for maintaining muscle mass and preventing sarcopenia, there is evidence that excessive protein intake, particularly from animal sources, may accelerate certain aspects of the aging process. The amino acid methionine, which is found in higher concentrations in animal proteins, has been shown to influence the rate of aging in laboratory animals. Restricting methionine intake has been shown to extend lifespan in mice, possibly by reducing oxidative stress and improving metabolic health. On the other hand, inadequate protein intake in older adults is a serious concern, as it can accelerate muscle loss, impair immune function, and reduce the body's ability to heal from injuries. The optimal amount and type of protein for promoting healthy aging is still a matter of scientific investigation, and the answer likely varies from person to person based on their individual biology, activity level, and health status. Physical activity is one of the most powerful tools available for slowing the aging process. The evidence is overwhelming and consistent. Regular exercise reduces the risk of virtually every age-related disease, including cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and dementia. It preserves muscle mass and strength, maintains bone density, improves balance and coordination, enhances mood and cognitive function, and promotes better sleep. Exercise has been shown to lengthen telomeres, reduce inflammation, improve immune function, and enhance the body's ability to repair damaged DNA. Studies have found that even modest amounts of regular physical activity, such as 30 minutes of brisk walking 5 days a week, can add years to a person's life and significantly reduce the risk of disability in old age. The mechanisms by which exercise exerts its anti-aging effects are numerous and include improvements in cardiovascular function, enhanced mitochondrial function, increased production of growth factors that support brain health, and the activation of genes involved in stress resistance and cellular repair. Mitochondria, the tiny organelles inside cells that produce the energy needed to power virtually every biological process, play a central role in the aging process. Often referred to as the powerhouses of the cell, mitochondria convert nutrients into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the molecule that serves as the cell's primary energy currency. As a person ages, mitochondrial function declines. The mitochondria become less efficient at producing energy, and they generate more free radicals as a byproduct of their activity. This creates a vicious cycle. The increased production of free radicals damages the mitochondria themselves, further reducing their efficiency and increasing the production of free radicals. The accumulation of mitochondrial damage is thought to contribute to many of the features of aging, including decreased energy levels, reduced physical endurance, and the decline in function of energy-hungry organs such as the brain and heart. Exercise is one of the most effective known interventions for improving mitochondrial function, as it stimulates the production of new, healthy mitochondria and the elimination of damaged ones. The relationship between stress and aging is one of the most important and underappreciated aspects of growing older. Chronic psychological stress has been shown to accelerate the aging process at the cellular level. A landmark study published in the early 2000s found that women who experienced chronic stress, in this case the stress of caring for a chronically ill child, had significantly shorter telomeres than women of the same age who were not under chronic stress. The difference in telomere length was equivalent to approximately 10 years of additional aging. Chronic stress activates the body's fight or flight response, flooding the body with cortisol and other stress hormones. While these hormones are essential for dealing with acute threats, their chronic elevation is damaging. Chronic cortisol elevation has been linked to immune suppression, increased inflammation, impaired memory, weight gain, high blood pressure, and an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Finding effective ways to manage stress, whether through meditation, social support, physical activity, or other strategies, is not just good for mental health. It is an essential component of healthy aging. Social connection is another factor that has a profound impact on how people age. Humans are inherently social creatures, and the quality of a person's social relationships has a measurable effect on their health and longevity. Studies have consistently shown that social isolation and loneliness are associated with increased mortality, with some researchers estimating that the health impact of chronic loneliness is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Socially connected older adults tend to have lower rates of depression, better cognitive function, stronger immune systems, and lower levels of inflammation. The mechanisms by which social connections promote health are likely multiple, including the buffering of stress, the encouragement of healthy behaviors, and the provision of a sense of purpose and meaning. In the blue zones, where people live the longest, strong social networks are a consistent feature. People belong to communities, they have close-knit families, they participate in group activities, and they feel a sense of belonging and connection that sustains them throughout their lives. The psychology of aging is a rich and complex field that challenges many common assumptions about growing older. While popular culture often portrays aging as a time of decline, loss, and unhappiness, research tells a different story. Studies have consistently found that older adults, on average, report higher levels of emotional well-being than younger adults. This phenomenon, sometimes called the paradox of aging, has been observed across multiple cultures and seems to be robust. Older adults tend to experience fewer negative emotions, are better at regulating their emotional responses, and report greater life satisfaction. They tend to prioritize meaningful relationships and experiences over the pursuit of novelty and achievement. They are better at letting go of grudges and focusing on what matters most to them. This does not mean that aging is without its challenges. Loss, grief, health problems, and the awareness of mortality are all very real aspects of growing older. But the evidence suggests that the human capacity for adaptation, resilience, and wisdom is remarkably strong, and that many people find ways to thrive even in the face of the challenges that aging brings. The concept of wisdom is closely tied to aging, and while it is difficult to define and measure scientifically, researchers have made progress in understanding what it entails. Wisdom appears to involve a combination of cognitive abilities, including the ability to see problems from multiple perspectives, to tolerate ambiguity and uncertainty, to balance self-interest with the interests of others, and to draw on a lifetime of experience to make sound judgments. Neuroscience research suggests that wisdom is associated with the integration of emotional and cognitive processing, which involves the coordinated activity of multiple brain regions, including the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the insula. While wisdom does not automatically come with age, the experiences and challenges that accumulate over a lifetime can provide the raw material from which wisdom is forged. The capacity for wisdom is one of the great gifts of aging, and it is a quality that societies throughout history have revered and sought in their elders. The way different cultures view and treat aging varies enormously and has a significant impact on the experience of growing older. In some cultures, particularly in East Asia, elders are revered, respected, and treated as repositories of wisdom and authority. Japan, for example, the concept of kero, respect for the elderly, is deeply embedded in the culture, and there is even a national holiday, Respect for the Aged Day, that celebrates older adults. In contrast, many Western cultures tend to emphasize youth, productivity, and independence, and older adults may feel marginalized, devalued, and invisible. Ageism, prejudice, and discrimination against people based on their age is pervasive and has been shown to have real health consequences. Research has found that people who hold negative views about aging tend to age more poorly than those who have positive attitudes. They have worse physical health, more cognitive decline, and even shorter lifespans. Internalizing negative stereotypes about aging can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, undermining a person's motivation to engage in healthy behaviors and eroding their sense of self-worth. The economic dimensions of aging are vast and far-reaching. As populations around the world grow older, the economic implications are profound. The cost of healthcare increases dramatically with age, and the growing number of older adults is placing unprecedented demands on healthcare systems, pension programs, and social services. At the same time, older adults represent a tremendous economic resource. They possess knowledge, skills, and experience that are invaluable, and many continue to contribute to the workforce, to their communities, and to their families well into their later years. The challenge for societies is to find ways to support the needs of an aging population while also leveraging the contributions that older adults can make. This requires a fundamental rethinking of policies related to retirement, healthcare, housing, transportation, and social support. The global demographic shift toward an older population is one of the most significant trends in human history. For the first time ever, there are more people on the planet over the age of 65 than there are under the age of 5. This shift is driven by two factors: declining birth rates and increasing life expectancy. In 1800, the average global life expectancy was approximately 30 years. Today, it is over 72 years, and in many developed nations, it exceeds 80 years. This increase in life expectancy is one of the greatest achievements of human civilization, driven by advances in sanitation, nutrition, medicine, and public health. But it also presents enormous challenges, from the sustainability of social security systems to the provision of adequate health care and long-term care for the growing number of people who live into their 80s, 90s, and beyond. The distinction between lifespan and health span is one of the most important concepts in the science of aging. Lifespan refers to the total number of years a person lives. Health span refers to the number of those years that are lived in good health, free from serious disease and disability. The goal of aging research is not simply to extend lifespan to add more years to a person's life. It is to extend health span to add more healthy, active, and fulfilling years. There is little benefit in living to be 100 if the last 20 years are spent in a state of chronic disease, disability, and dependence. The most promising approaches to extending health span involve interventions that target the fundamental mechanisms of aging rather than treating individual diseases one at a time. By addressing the root causes of aging, researchers hope to delay the onset of multiple age-related diseases simultaneously, compressing the period of illness and disability into the shortest possible window at the end of life. The pharmaceutical industry is actively pursuing drugs that target the aging process itself. One of the most intriguing candidates is a drug called Rapamycin, which was originally developed as an immunosuppressant for use in organ transplantation. Rapamycin works by inhibiting a molecular pathway called mTOR, which stands for mechanistic target of rapamycin. The mTOR pathway plays a central role in regulating cell growth, metabolism, and autophagy. When mTOR is inhibited, cells shift into a more protective, repair-oriented mode. Studies in mice have shown that rapamycin can extend lifespan by as much as 25%, even when treatment is started late in life. It improves cardiac function, enhances immune function, and reduces the incidence of cancer. However, rapamycin also has significant side effects, including immune suppression and metabolic disturbances, which have limited its use as an anti-aging therapy in humans. Researchers are working to develop modified versions of rapamycin, known as rapalogs, that retain the anti-aging benefits while minimizing the side effects. Metformin, a drug that has been used for decades to treat type 2 diabetes, is another candidate that has attracted enormous interest in the aging research community. Epidemiological studies have found that diabetic patients who take metformin tend to live longer than both diabetic patients who take other medications and even non-diabetic individuals in the general population. Metformin appears to exert its effects through multiple mechanisms, including the activation of an enzyme called AMP-activated protein kinase, which plays a key role in energy metabolism, the reduction of inflammation, the improvement of mitochondrial function, and the enhancement of autophagy. A large-scale clinical trial called TAME, which stands for Targeting Aging with Metformin, is currently underway to test whether metformin can delay the onset of age-related diseases in healthy older adults. If successful, this trial could mark a paradigm shift in medicine, providing the first drug approved not to treat a specific disease, but to target the aging process itself. The role of NAD+, a molecule that is essential for cellular energy production and DNA repair, has become a hot topic in aging research. NAD+ levels decline significantly with age, and this decline has been linked to many of the hallmarks of aging, including mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, and DNA damage. Researchers have found that boosting NAD+ levels in aged mice through supplementation with precursor molecules such as nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide can reverse some aspects of aging, improving mitochondrial function, enhancing physical endurance, and extending lifespan. These findings have generated enormous excitement, and NAD+ precursor supplements are now widely available to consumers. However, it is important to note that the evidence for the anti-aging effects of NAD+ supplementation in humans is still limited, and large-scale, long-term clinical trials are needed to determine whether these supplements can truly slow or reverse aging in people. The science of regenerative medicine holds the promise of repairing or replacing tissues and organs that have been damaged by aging. Stem cell therapy, one of the most promising approaches in regenerative medicine, involves the use of stem cells, cells that have the ability to develop into many different types of specialized cells to repair or regenerate damaged tissues. Researchers have used stem cells to grow new cartilage for worn-out joints, to repair damaged heart tissue after a heart attack, and to regenerate nerve cells in the brain. The potential applications of stem cell therapy for aging are vast, but significant challenges remain, including the risk of immune rejection, the difficulty of controlling stem cell differentiation, and the potential for tumor formation. Despite these challenges, the field is advancing rapidly, and many researchers believe that regenerative medicine will play an increasingly important role in extending health span in the coming decades. Gene therapy, another frontier in the fight against aging, involves the introduction, alteration, or replacement of genetic material within a person's cells to treat or prevent disease. Researchers have used gene therapy in animal models to extend lifespan and improve health in old age. For example, studies in mice have shown that the introduction of the gene for telomerase can extend lifespan and improve the function of multiple organs without increasing the risk of cancer. Other studies have used gene therapy to boost the expression of genes involved in autophagy, DNA repair, and antioxidant defense, with promising results. The application of gene therapy to aging in humans is still in its early stages, and significant safety and ethical concerns remain. But the potential is enormous, and as gene therapy technologies become more precise and more widely available, they could open entirely new avenues for combating the effects of aging. The field of parabiosis research has produced some of the most striking and thought-provoking findings in the science of aging. Parabiosis involves surgically connecting the circulatory systems of two animals so that they share the same blood supply. When researchers connected the circulatory systems of old and young mice, something remarkable happened. The old mice showed signs of rejuvenation. Their brains produced more new neurons, their muscles became stronger, their hearts functioned better. Their fur became shinier. Conversely, the young mice showed signs of accelerated aging. These findings suggest that there are factors in young blood that can promote tissue repair and regeneration, and factors in old blood that contribute to aging and decline. Researchers are working to identify these factors, and several candidates have been proposed, including a protein called GDF11 and a hormone called oxytocin. The parabiosis research has sparked a wave of interest in the potential of blood-borne factors as therapeutic targets for aging, although much more research is needed before these findings can be translated into treatments for humans. Hormesis is a concept that is central to understanding how the body responds to stress and how certain types of stress can actually promote health and longevity. Hormesis refers to the phenomenon whereby a low dose of a stressor that would be harmful at higher doses actually stimulates the body's repair and defense mechanisms, leading to improved function and resilience. Examples of hormetic stressors include exercise, which causes temporary muscle damage that triggers repair processes that ultimately make the muscles stronger, caloric restriction, which triggers cellular stress responses that enhance autophagy and metabolic efficiency, and exposure to mild heat or cold, which activates heat shock proteins and other protective molecules. The concept of hormesis helps explain why some degree of challenge and adversity is actually beneficial for health, and why a life entirely free of stress may not be conducive to longevity. It suggests that the body's repair mechanisms need to be regularly activated and exercised to function optimally, much like muscles that need to be used to maintain their strength. The role of heat shock proteins in aging is an area of growing scientific interest. Heat shock proteins are a family of molecules that are produced by cells in response to stressful conditions, such as heat, cold, exercise, and oxidative stress. These proteins act as molecular chaperones, helping to repair damaged proteins and prevent the accumulation of misfolded proteins that can impair cell function. The accumulation of misfolded and damaged proteins is one of the hallmarks of aging and is implicated in several age-related diseases, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. As a person ages, the production of heat shock proteins declines, reducing the cell's ability to cope with stress and maintain protein quality control. Interventions that boost the production of heat shock proteins, such as regular exercise, sauna use, and certain dietary compounds, are being explored as potential strategies for promoting healthy aging. The accumulation of advanced glycation end products, commonly known as AGEs, is another important factor in the aging process. AGEs are formed when sugars react with proteins or fats in a process called glycation. This process occurs naturally in the body as a consequence of normal metabolism, but it is accelerated by high blood sugar levels and by the consumption of foods that have been cooked at high temperatures, particularly those that are fried, grilled, or roasted. Ages accumulate in tissues over time and cause damage by cross-linking proteins, which makes them stiff and dysfunctional. Collagen, the most abundant protein in the body, is particularly susceptible to glycation, which is one of the reasons why skin loses its elasticity and blood vessels become stiffer with age. Ages also trigger inflammation and oxidative stress, further contributing to the aging process. Reducing the formation and accumulation of ages through dietary choices, blood sugar management, and cooking methods that use lower temperatures is an area of active research and practical application. Water, the most basic and essential of all nutrients, plays a role in aging that is often overlooked. As people age, their sense of thirst diminishes and they become more susceptible to dehydration. The body's total water content decreases with age, from approximately 70% in young adults to as low as 50% in older adults. This decline in body water can impair kidney function, reduce the body's ability to regulate temperature, and contribute to constipation, urinary tract infections, and confusion. Chronic mild dehydration, which is common among older adults, has been associated with increased mortality and an accelerated rate of biological aging. Recent research has suggested that staying well hydrated throughout life may be associated with a lower risk of chronic diseases and a longer lifespan. While drinking water may seem like one of the simplest health interventions imaginable, its importance for healthy aging should not be underestimated. The circadian rhythm, the body's internal clock that regulates the sleep-wake cycle and many other biological processes, becomes disrupted with age. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of nerve cells in the brain that serves as the master clock, deteriorates over time, leading to changes in the timing and amplitude of circadian rhythms. Older adults tend to have weaker circadian signals, which can contribute to difficulties with sleep, changes in hormone secretion, altered body temperature regulation, and metabolic disturbances. Disruption of the circadian rhythm has been linked to an increased risk of several age-related diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cognitive decline. Maintaining a regular schedule of light exposure, meals, and sleep can help strengthen circadian rhythms and promote healthier aging. Morning light exposure is particularly important as it helps synchronize the body's internal clock with the external environment. The role of sunlight and vitamin D in aging deserves special attention. Vitamin D, which is produced in the skin in response to ultraviolet B radiation from the sun, plays critical roles in bone health, immune function, and many other biological processes. As people age, the skin's ability to produce vitamin D decreases, and older adults who spend more time indoors are at increased risk of vitamin D deficiency. Low vitamin D levels have been associated with an increased risk of osteoporosis, fractures, cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, autoimmune diseases, and cognitive decline. The relationship between sun exposure and aging is complex, however, because while moderate sun exposure is necessary for vitamin D production and has been associated with various health benefits, excessive sun exposure damages the skin and accelerates the appearance of aging. Ultraviolet radiation is the primary cause of photoaging, the premature aging of the skin that is characterized by wrinkles, pigmentation changes, and loss of elasticity. Balancing the benefits and risks of sun exposure is an important aspect of healthy aging. The teeth, those remarkable structures that allow us to chew our food and express our emotions through smiling, also undergo significant changes with age. The enamel, the hard outer covering of the teeth, thins over time due to decades of wear and exposure to acidic foods and beverages. The dentin, the layer beneath the enamel, becomes less sensitive as the nerve inside the tooth shrinks. The gums may recede, exposing more of the tooth and making it more susceptible to decay. The risk of periodontal disease, an inflammatory condition that affects the gums and the bone that supports the teeth, increases with age, and advanced periodontal disease is the leading cause of tooth loss in older adults. But the impact of oral health on aging extends far beyond the mouth. Chronic periodontal disease has been linked to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, respiratory infections, and even dementia. The bacteria and inflammatory molecules associated with gum disease can enter the bloodstream and affect distant organs, illustrating the interconnectedness of the body's systems and the far-reaching consequences of even localized age-related changes. Hair, one of the most visible markers of aging, undergoes changes that are both cosmetic and biologically interesting. The graying of hair is caused by a decline in the production of melanin, the pigment that gives hair its color. This decline is due to the gradual depletion and loss of function of melanocyte stem cells in the hair follicle. By the age of 50, approximately half of all people have a significant amount of gray hair. The age at which graying begins is largely determined by genetics, although stress, smoking, and certain medical conditions can accelerate the process. In addition to graying, hair also tends to become thinner with age. The hair growth cycle slows, the diameter of individual hair strands decreases, and hair may become finer and more brittle. In men, androgenetic alopecia or male pattern baldness is extremely common and is driven by a combination of genetic susceptibility and the effects of the hormone dihydrotestosterone on hair follicles. Women can also experience age-related hair thinning, which is often related to hormonal changes associated with menopause. The voice changes with age in ways that are both subtle and significant. The larynx or voice box undergoes structural changes as a person ages. The vocal cords become thinner and less flexible. The cartilage of the larynx may ossify and the muscles that control the vocal cords weaken. These changes can result in a higher-pitched, thinner, and more tremulous voice. The speaking rate may slow, and the voice may become more easily fatigued. These changes can affect communication, social interaction, and self-confidence. For some older adults, voice changes are significant enough to warrant medical evaluation and treatment, including voice therapy exercises that can improve vocal strength and quality. The senses, those extraordinary gateways through which we experience the richness of the world, are profoundly affected by the passage of time. We have already spoken about the changes that occur in vision and hearing, but the chemical senses, smell and taste, undergo their own quiet decline, and the consequences are more significant than most people realize. The sense of smell begins to diminish noticeably after the age of 60, and by the age of 80, many people have experienced a substantial reduction in their ability to detect and identify odors. This decline is caused by a decrease in the number of olfactory receptors in the nose, a thinning of the olfactory epithelium, and age-related changes in the brain regions that process olfactory information. The sense of taste also declines, although less dramatically than smell. The number of taste buds decreases with age, and the remaining taste buds become less sensitive. Because smell and taste are so closely intertwined, with much of what we perceive as flavor actually being driven by our sense of smell, the decline in olfactory function can make food seem bland and unappetizing. This can lead to reduced appetite, poor nutrition, and unintentional weight loss in older adults, but the implications go beyond nutrition. The ability to smell smoke from a fire, the odor of spoiled food, or a gas leak is a safety issue, and the loss of this ability puts older adults at increased risk of harm. The decline of the chemical senses is one of the quieter but deeply consequential aspects of aging. There is a change that virtually every person who lives long enough will experience, and it is one that can be measured with nothing more than a tape measure. People get shorter as they age. Starting around the age of 40, most people begin to lose height, and the rate of height loss accelerates after the age of 70. Over the course of a lifetime, a person can lose 1 to 3 inches or even more in height. This shrinkage is caused by several factors. The intervertebral discs, the soft, gel-like cushions that sit between the vertebrae of the spine, lose water content and compress over time. The vertebrae themselves may develop small compression fractures, particularly in people with osteoporosis. The muscles that support the spine weaken, and changes in posture, including an increased curvature of the upper back known as kyphosis, contribute to the apparent loss of stature. This change in height is more than cosmetic. It can affect balance, gait, and the overall alignment of the body, contributing to an increased risk of falls and musculoskeletal pain. The body's ability to regulate its internal temperature becomes impaired with aging, and this has consequences that can be life-threatening. The thermoregulatory system, which maintains the body's core temperature within a narrow range, relies on the ability to sense temperature changes, to adjust blood flow to the skin, to produce sweat for cooling, and to generate heat through shivering and metabolic activity. All of these functions decline with age. Older adults are less able to sense changes in ambient temperature, which means they may not realize that they are becoming too hot or too cold. The sweat glands become less active, reducing the body's ability to cool itself through evaporation. Blood flow to the skin decreases, impairing both heat dissipation and heat conservation. The metabolic rate slows, reducing the body's ability to generate heat. These changes make older adults particularly vulnerable to heat stroke during hot weather and hypothermia during cold weather. Heat waves and cold snaps disproportionately affect the elderly, and the impaired ability to regulate body temperature is a significant contributor to the excess mortality that is observed among older adults during extreme weather events. The remarkable process of wound healing, which most young people take for granted, slows considerably with age. In youth, a minor cut or scrape heals within days, with the body efficiently marshaling an army of cells to clean the wound, fight infection, rebuild tissue, and restore the skin's integrity. In older adults, this process takes significantly longer. The inflammatory response, which is the first phase of wound healing, may be prolonged and less well regulated. The proliferation of new cells to fill in the wound is slower. The production of collagen, which provides the structural framework for new tissue, is reduced. Blood flow to the wound site may be compromised by the stiffening of blood vessels. The immune system's diminished capacity increases the risk of infection. All of these factors combine to make wound healing a slower and more precarious process in older adults. Chronic wounds, including pressure ulcers and diabetic foot ulcers, are a major source of suffering and healthcare costs among the elderly, and improving wound healing in aged tissues is an active area of medical research. The perception of pain changes with age in ways that are complex and sometimes counterintuitive. While many older adults suffer from chronic pain conditions such as arthritis, neuropathy, and back pain, research suggests that the aging nervous system may actually become less sensitive to acute pain. The density of pain receptors in the skin decreases, and the speed at which pain signals are transmitted along nerves slows. This reduced sensitivity to acute pain can be dangerous, as it may delay the recognition of conditions that require urgent medical attention, such as a heart attack or appendicitis. At the same time, the brain's ability to modulate and suppress chronic pain may decline, leading to an increased burden of persistent pain. The experience of pain in old age is shaped by a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors, and managing pain effectively in older adults requires a nuanced and individualized approach. The digestive system, that long and intricate tube through which food travels on its journey from mouth to exit, is not spared by the aging process. The production of digestive enzymes and stomach acid decreases with age, which can impair the breakdown and absorption of nutrients. The muscles of the digestive tract may weaken, leading to slower movement of food through the system, a condition known as decreased gastrointestinal motility. This slowing of digestion contributes to the increased prevalence of constipation among older adults, a condition that, while not life-threatening, can cause significant discomfort and reduce quality of life. The lining of the intestines becomes less effective at absorbing certain nutrients, including calcium, iron, and vitamin B12, which can lead to deficiencies even in people who eat a balanced diet. The liver and pancreas, both of which play crucial roles in digestion, also show age-related declines in function. Changes in the gut microbiome, which we discussed earlier, further complicate the digestive picture. The overall result is a digestive system that is less efficient, less resilient, and less able to extract the full nutritional value from the food it processes. The urinary system undergoes changes that many older adults find particularly distressing. The bladder loses some of its elasticity with age, reducing its capacity to hold urine. The muscles of the bladder wall may become overactive, leading to sudden, strong urges to urinate. The pelvic floor muscles, which support the bladder and help control urination, weaken over time, particularly in women who have given birth. In men, the prostate gland tends to enlarge with age, a condition known as benign prostatic hyperplasia, which can obstruct the flow of urine and lead to difficulty urinating, frequent urination, and the sensation of incomplete bladder emptying. Urinary incontinence, the involuntary leakage of urine, affects millions of older adults and is one of the most common reasons for admission to long-term care facilities. The embarrassment and social stigma associated with incontinence can lead to social withdrawal, depression, and a significant reduction in quality of life. Despite its prevalence, urinary incontinence is often underreported and undertreated, and many effective interventions, including pelvic floor exercises, behavioral strategies, medications, and surgical procedures, are available. Sexual function changes with age, but the capacity for intimacy and sexual expression does not disappear. In women, the hormonal changes of menopause lead to decreased vaginal lubrication, thinning of the vaginal walls, and changes in sexual desire. In men, the decline in testosterone and changes in blood flow can lead to erectile dysfunction, which becomes increasingly common with age. The time required to achieve arousal increases, and the intensity of orgasm may decrease. However, research has consistently shown that many older adults continue to be sexually active and find sex to be an important and satisfying part of their lives. Sexual intimacy in later life has been associated with better physical health, improved mood, and greater relationship satisfaction. The barriers to sexual expression in old age are often as much social and psychological as they are physical. Societal attitudes that portray older adults as asexual, the loss of a partner, health conditions, medications, and body image concerns all play a role. Encouraging open conversations about sexuality in later life and addressing the physical and emotional barriers to intimacy are important aspects of promoting well-being in older adults. One of the most remarkable discoveries in the psychology of aging is the phenomenon known as the positivity effect. As people grow older, they tend to pay more attention to and remember positive information over negative information. This is the opposite of what happens in younger adults who tend to have a negativity bias, paying more attention to threats, dangers, and negative experiences. The positivity effect appears to be driven by changes in the way the aging brain processes emotional information. Functional brain imaging studies have shown that older adults show reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat center, in response to negative stimuli compared to younger adults. At the same time, they show maintained or increased activity in brain regions associated with emotion regulation, such as the prefrontal cortex. This shift toward positivity may be an adaptive response to the awareness of a limited time horizon. As people become more aware that their time is finite, they prioritize emotional well-being, meaningful relationships, and positive experiences over the pursuit of information, achievement, and novelty. This is consistent with socio-emotional selectivity theory, which proposes that the perception of time plays a fundamental role in the selection and pursuit of social goals. The different types of memory are affected by aging in different ways, and understanding these differences is crucial for distinguishing normal age-related cognitive changes from the signs of disease. Episodic memory, the ability to remember specific events and experiences, declines with age. This is the type of memory that is most commonly affected and the one that most people think of when they worry about memory loss. Semantic memory, the storehouse of general knowledge, facts, and vocabulary, tends to remain stable or even improve with age. Procedural memory, the memory for skills and habits such as riding a bicycle or playing a musical instrument, is generally well preserved. Working memory, the ability to hold and manipulate information in mind over short periods, shows a modest decline. The speed at which information is processed also slows, which can affect performance on tasks that require rapid thinking. These changes are a normal part of aging and do not indicate dementia. However, when memory loss is severe enough to interfere with daily functioning, when it progresses rapidly, or when it is accompanied by changes in language, judgment, or personality, it may be a sign of a neurodegenerative disease and warrants medical evaluation. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, was once thought to be limited to childhood and adolescence. It was believed that the adult brain was essentially fixed, incapable of significant change or adaptation. This view has been thoroughly overturned by modern neuroscience. Research has shown that the brain retains a significant capacity for plasticity throughout life, including in old age. Older adults can learn new skills, form new memories, and even recover function after brain injuries such as strokes. The brain accomplishes this through the strengthening and weakening of existing synaptic connections, the formation of new synapses, and in certain brain regions, the generation of entirely new neurons. This capacity for lifelong plasticity is one of the most hopeful findings in the science of aging, because it means that the aging brain is not simply a passive victim of decline. It is an active, dynamic organ that can be shaped and strengthened through experience, learning, and deliberate practice. The relationship between physical exercise and brain health in old age has been one of the most exciting areas of research in recent decades. Exercise has been shown to increase the volume of the hippocampus, the brain region most critical for memory formation, in older adults. It promotes the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports the survival and growth of neurons. It enhances blood flow to the brain, improves the function of the blood-brain barrier, and reduces inflammation. Exercise has also been shown to stimulate neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, in the hippocampus of adult animals, and there is growing evidence that the same may occur in humans. Epidemiological studies have consistently found that physically active older adults have a lower risk of cognitive decline and dementia compared to their sedentary peers. The evidence is strong enough that physical exercise is now considered one of the most effective strategies available for protecting brain health in old age. The type of exercise that appears to be most beneficial is aerobic exercise, such as walking, swimming, or cycling, although resistance training and mind-body practices such as yoga and Tai Chi also show benefits. Stem cell exhaustion is one of the fundamental hallmarks of aging at the cellular level. Throughout life, stem cells serve as the body's repair and renewal system, generating new cells to replace those that are damaged, worn out, or lost. However, the number and function of stem cells decline with age. The stem cells that reside in the bone marrow, which produce the blood cells and immune cells, become less productive and more prone to errors. The muscle stem cells, known as satellite cells, become less responsive to signals for repair. The neural stem cells in the brain become less active. This decline in stem cell function is driven by multiple factors, including the accumulation of DNA damage, changes in the stem cell niche, the microenvironment that supports stem cell function, and the buildup of senescent cells that secrete factors hostile to stem cell activity. The exhaustion of stem cell pools is one of the reasons why the body becomes less able to repair itself with age and why injuries take longer to heal. Strategies to rejuvenate or replenish stem cell populations are a major focus of regenerative medicine and aging research. The loss of proteostases, the ability of cells to maintain the proper folding, function, and disposal of proteins, is another critical hallmark of aging. Proteins are the workhorses of the cell, carrying out virtually every biological function. For proteins to work properly, they must be folded into precise three-dimensional shapes. When proteins misfold, they can become dysfunctional and even toxic. Young, healthy cells have robust quality control systems that detect and correct misfolded proteins or target them for destruction. As a person ages, these quality control systems become less effective. Misfolded and aggregated proteins accumulate in cells and tissues, impairing function and contributing to disease. The buildup of misfolded proteins is a defining feature of several neurodegenerative diseases. In Alzheimer's disease, the culprit is amyloid beta and tau protein. In Parkinson's disease, it is alpha-synuclein. In Huntington's disease, it is the huntingtin protein. But the loss of proteostases is not limited to the brain. It affects cells throughout the body and is a fundamental contributor to the overall decline in function that characterizes aging. The communication between cells, the intricate signaling networks that coordinate the activities of billions of cells working together in harmony, also becomes disrupted with age. This is sometimes referred to as altered intercellular communication, and it is one of the recognized hallmarks of aging. The signals that cells send to one another through hormones, cytokines, growth factors, and other molecules become dysregulated. Inflammatory signals increase, while regenerative and repair signals decrease. The extracellular matrix, the complex network of proteins and molecules that provides structural support to cells and tissues and serves as a highway for intercellular communication, becomes stiffer, more cross-linked, and less functional. These changes in communication mean that the body's tissues and organs are less able to coordinate their responses to stress, injury, and disease. The breakdown of intercellular communication is one of the integrative hallmarks of aging, a consequence of the accumulated damage at the molecular and cellular levels that has cascading effects on the function of tissues, organs, and the organism as a whole. Genomic instability, the gradual accumulation of damage to the DNA that encodes the instructions for every function in every cell, is considered the most fundamental hallmark of aging. Throughout a person's life, their DNA is constantly bombarded by threats both internal and external. Reactive oxygen species generated by normal metabolism, errors during DNA replication, exposure to ultraviolet radiation, environmental chemicals, and many other factors all cause damage to the DNA molecule. While the body's DNA repair mechanisms are remarkably efficient, they are not perfect, and over time, unrepaired damage accumulates. This accumulation of genomic damage can lead to mutations that alter gene function, chromosomal abnormalities, and disruptions to gene regulation. Some of these changes are benign, but others can impair cell function, trigger cellular senescence, or initiate the chain of events that leads to cancer. The accumulation of genomic instability is, in many ways, the root cause from which many of the other hallmarks of aging flow. Epigenetic alterations, changes in the chemical marks that sit on top of the DNA and regulate which genes are turned on and which are turned off, are another recognized hallmark of aging. These epigenetic marks, which include DNA methylation patterns, histone modifications, and changes in chromatin structure, shift in predictable ways as a person ages. Some genes that should be active become silenced, while others that should be silent become inappropriately activated. These changes in gene expression patterns contribute to the functional decline of cells and tissues and are implicated in many age-related diseases. The exciting aspect of epigenetic changes, however, is that unlike mutations in the DNA sequence itself, epigenetic marks are potentially reversible. This has led to intense research interest in the possibility of reprogramming the epigenome to restore a more youthful pattern of gene expression. In a landmark study, researchers demonstrated that by introducing a set of 4 transcription factors, known as Yamanaka factors, into aged cells, they could partially reverse the epigenetic age of those cells, restoring features of youthful function. This discovery has opened up an entirely new frontier in aging research, one that holds the tantalizing possibility of not just slowing aging, but actually reversing it at the cellular level. The nutrient-sensing pathways, the molecular circuits that detect and respond to the availability of nutrients, are deregulated with age, and this deregulation is another important hallmark of the aging process. These pathways, which include the insulin and insulin-like growth factor signaling pathway, the mTOR pathway, the AMPK pathway, and the sirtuin pathway, evolved to help organisms adapt to fluctuations in food availability. When nutrients are abundant, these pathways promote growth and reproduction. When nutrients are scarce, they shift the body into a protective, repair-oriented mode. In modern environments where food is often available in abundance, these pathways tend to be chronically activated in the growth-promoting direction, which accelerates aging. Caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, and certain pharmacological interventions such as rapamycin and metformin can shift the balance of nutrient-sensing pathways toward the protective mode, which is one of the reasons these interventions show promise for extending health span and lifespan. Understanding and modulating nutrient-sensing pathways is one of the most active and promising areas of aging research. Sirtuins are a family of proteins that have attracted enormous attention in the aging research community. There are 7 sirtuins in mammals, designated SIRT1 through SIRT7, and they play diverse roles in cellular health, including the regulation of gene expression, DNA repair, metabolism, and stress resistance. Sirtuins require NAD+ to function, which is one of the reasons why the age-related decline in NAD+ levels is thought to be so consequential. The most studied member of the family, SIRT1, has been shown to extend lifespan in yeast, worms, and flies when its activity is increased. Resveratrol, a compound found in red wine and certain berries, gained fame as a potential activator of SIRT1, and it was widely promoted as an anti-aging supplement. However, the evidence for the life-extending effects of resveratrol in mammals has been mixed, and its status as a true sirtuin activator has been debated. More potent and specific sirtuin activators are being developed and tested, and the role of sirtuins in aging remains an area of intensive investigation. The revolutionary gene editing technology known as CRISPR has opened up possibilities in aging research that were unimaginable just a few years ago. CRISPR, which stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, allows scientists to make precise changes to the DNA of living organisms with unprecedented accuracy and efficiency. In the context of aging, CRISPR has been used to modify genes associated with aging in laboratory animals, to study the effects of specific genetic changes on lifespan and health span, and to develop potential therapies for age-related diseases. Researchers have used CRISPR to knock out genes that promote cellular senescence, to enhance the expression of genes involved in DNA repair and autophagy, and to correct mutations associated with premature aging syndromes such as progeria. While the application of CRISPR to combat aging in humans is still in its earliest stages and raises profound ethical questions, the technology represents a powerful new tool in the quest to understand and intervene in the aging process. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming the landscape of aging research. These technologies are being used to analyze vast datasets of genomic, proteomic, metabolomic, and clinical data to identify patterns and biomarkers of aging that would be impossible for humans to detect. Machine learning algorithms have been used to develop more accurate epigenetic clocks to predict the risk of age-related diseases, to identify potential anti-aging drug candidates, and to personalize interventions based on an individual's unique biological profile. AI-powered image analysis can detect signs of aging in medical images with remarkable accuracy, and natural language processing can mine the scientific literature for connections between genes, pathways, and aging phenotypes. The integration of artificial intelligence into aging research is accelerating the pace of discovery and has the potential to usher in a new era of precision medicine for aging, where interventions are tailored to the specific biological needs of each individual. Wearable technology is beginning to play an increasingly important role in monitoring and promoting healthy aging. Devices that track physical activity, heart rate, sleep patterns, blood oxygen levels, and other physiological parameters are providing individuals and their healthcare providers with unprecedented insights into health status and trends over time. For older adults, wearable technology can serve as an early warning system, detecting changes in activity patterns, heart rhythm abnormalities, or sleep disturbances that may signal the onset of health problems. Fall detection features can alert emergency services if an older adult experiences a fall, potentially reducing the time between the fall and the receipt of medical care. Some researchers envision a future in which a comprehensive network of sensors, both worn on the body and embedded in the home environment, continuously monitors the health of older adults and uses artificial intelligence to predict and prevent health crises before they occur. While privacy and data security concerns are important considerations, the potential of wearable technology to support independent living and healthy aging is enormous. The concept of purpose, the sense that one's life has meaning and direction, has emerged as a powerful predictor of health and longevity. In Japan, this concept is known as ikigai, a word that roughly translates to a reason for being. In Okinawa, one of the world's blue zones, the concept of ikigai is deeply embedded in the culture, and older adults often articulate a clear sense of purpose that gives structure and meaning to their days. Research has shown that having a strong sense of purpose in life is associated with a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, dementia, and premature death. It is associated with better sleep, stronger immune function, and healthier behaviors. The mechanisms by which purpose exerts its protective effects are not fully understood, but they may involve the reduction of chronic stress, the promotion of health-promoting behaviors, and the enhancement of social connections. For older adults who are transitioning out of the workforce and into retirement, finding or maintaining a sense of purpose can be a critical factor in preserving health and well-being. The transition from work to retirement is one of the most significant life changes that people experience, and its impact on health and aging is complex and sometimes surprising. For some people, retirement is a welcome release from the stresses of work, an opportunity to pursue long-deferred interests, spend time with family, and enjoy a more relaxed pace of life. For others, retirement can be a disorienting and even devastating experience, stripping away the structure, social connections, identity, and sense of purpose that work provided. Research on the health effects of retirement has produced mixed results. Some studies have found that retirement is associated with improved mental health and reduced stress, while others have found that it is associated with cognitive decline, social isolation, and increased mortality, particularly among men. The key factor appears to be not whether a person retires, but what they do with their time after retirement. Those who remain socially engaged, physically active, intellectually stimulated, and connected to a sense of purpose tend to fare much better than those who become isolated and sedentary. The relationship between companion animals and healthy aging is an area that has received increasing scientific attention. Owning a pet, particularly a dog, has been associated with lower blood pressure, reduced cholesterol levels, decreased feelings of loneliness, and increased physical activity. Dog owners, in particular, tend to walk more than non-owners, which provides the dual benefits of exercise and exposure to fresh air and sunlight. The companionship of a pet can provide emotional comfort, reduce stress, and create opportunities for social interaction with other pet owners. For older adults who live alone, a pet can be a vital source of companionship and a reason to maintain a daily routine. Animal-assisted therapy programs in nursing homes and assisted living facilities have been shown to improve mood, reduce agitation, and enhance social interaction among residents. While pet ownership is not feasible or appropriate for everyone, the evidence suggests that the human-animal bond can be a meaningful contributor to health and well-being in later life. Music has a remarkable and almost magical relationship with the aging brain. While many cognitive abilities decline with age, the capacity to respond to and be moved by music often persists even in the face of severe cognitive impairment. Individuals with advanced Alzheimer's disease who can no longer recognize their own family members may still respond to familiar songs, tapping their feet, singing along, or becoming visibly more alert and engaged. Music therapy has been shown to reduce agitation, improve mood, enhance social interaction, and even temporarily improve cognitive function in people with dementia. The reason for music's enduring power over the aging brain may lie in the fact that musical memories are stored in brain regions that are relatively spared by Alzheimer's disease, including the supplementary motor area and the basal ganglia. Music also activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and creating feelings of pleasure and emotional connection. The use of music as a therapeutic tool for older adults is growing, and it represents one of the most accessible and enjoyable interventions available for promoting well-being in later life. Laughter, that uniquely human expression of joy and amusement, has measurable health benefits that are particularly relevant to aging. Research has shown that laughter reduces levels of cortisol and other stress hormones, increases the production of endorphins, enhances immune function, improves blood vessel function, and reduces pain perception. A good laugh increases heart rate and oxygen consumption in a way that has been compared to mild aerobic exercise. The social dimension of laughter is equally important. Laughter is fundamentally a social behavior, and it strengthens bonds between people, eases tension, and promotes a sense of connection and belonging. Older adults who maintain a sense of humor and who regularly engage in activities that bring them joy and laughter tend to have better mental health, stronger social networks, and higher levels of life satisfaction. The ability to find humor in the challenges of aging is itself a form of resilience, a way of acknowledging difficulty while refusing to be defined by it. The practice of forgiveness, the letting go of resentment, and the desire for retribution has been linked to better health outcomes in older adults. Holding on to grudges and harboring anger has been shown to increase blood pressure, elevate stress hormones, impair immune function, and contribute to anxiety and depression. Forgiveness, on the other hand, has been associated with lower blood pressure, reduced stress, improved immune function, and greater psychological well-being. Studies have found that older adults tend to be more forgiving than younger adults, which may contribute to the improved emotional well-being that is often observed in later life. The act of forgiveness does not mean condoning or forgetting harmful behavior. It means releasing the emotional burden of resentment and choosing to move forward without being anchored to past hurts. For older adults who are reflecting on a lifetime of relationships and experiences, the capacity for forgiveness can be a powerful tool for achieving peace and closure. Gratitude, the conscious recognition and appreciation of the good things in one's life, has been linked to a host of health benefits that are relevant to aging. Research has shown that people who regularly practice gratitude, whether through journaling, meditation, or simply taking time to reflect on the things they are thankful for, tend to have better sleep, lower levels of depression and anxiety, stronger immune function, and greater overall life satisfaction. Gratitude has been shown to reduce inflammation, improve heart health, and enhance social relationships. For older adults who may face increasing losses and challenges, cultivating a practice of gratitude can serve as a counterbalance, helping to maintain a positive outlook and a sense of appreciation for the life they have lived and the moments they continue to experience. The evidence suggests that gratitude is not just a pleasant emotion. It is a measurable contributor to health and longevity. The compression of morbidity is a concept that encapsulates one of the most important goals of aging research and public health. The term was coined by James Fries of Stanford University in 1980, and it refers to the idea that the period of illness and disability at the end of life can be compressed into a shorter span, ideally pushing it closer and closer to the very end of life. In other words, the goal is not simply to live longer, but to remain healthy and functional for as much of one's life as possible, experiencing a rapid decline only at the very end, rather than spending years or decades in a state of chronic disease and disability. The compression of morbidity is achievable, and the factors that promote it are many of the same factors we have discussed throughout this documentary: regular physical activity, a healthy diet, maintenance of a healthy weight, avoidance of smoking and excessive alcohol consumption, strong social connections, a sense of purpose, and effective management of chronic conditions. The vision of a long, healthy, active life followed by a brief decline at the very end is not a fantasy. It is a realistic and achievable goal for many people, and it is the driving force behind much of the research into the biology of aging. The dream of conquering aging entirely, of achieving some form of physical immortality, has captivated humans for millennia. From the ancient Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, in which the hero searches for the secret of eternal life, to the alchemists of the Middle Ages who sought the elixir of life, to the modern billionaires who are pouring billions of dollars into longevity research, the desire to escape the finality of aging and death is one of the most enduring themes in human history. Cryonics, the practice of preserving the bodies or brains of deceased individuals at extremely low temperatures in the hope that future technology will be able to revive and rejuvenate them, represents one of the most audacious expressions of this desire. Several hundred people have been cryopreserved since the practice began in the 1960s, and thousands more have signed up to be preserved upon their death. The scientific basis for cryonics is highly speculative, and the vast majority of scientists consider the prospect of successfully reviving a cryopreserved human to be extremely remote. The damage caused by the freezing and preservation process is extensive, and the technology to repair it does not exist and may never exist. Nevertheless, cryonics represents a fascinating intersection of science, technology, hope, and the deeply human refusal to accept the inevitability of death. The concept of digital immortality, the idea that a person's consciousness, personality, memories, and identity could be uploaded to a computer and preserved indefinitely, is another frontier that pushes the boundaries of what aging and death might mean in the future. Advances in artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and computing power have led some thinkers and technologists to speculate that it may one day be possible to create a digital replica of a person's mind that is so complete and accurate that it effectively constitutes a continuation of that person's existence. Proponents of this idea envision a future in which people can live on as digital entities, interacting with the living, exploring virtual worlds, and continuing to learn and grow long after their biological bodies have ceased to function. Critics argue that a digital copy, no matter how accurate, would not truly be the same person, that consciousness is not simply a pattern of information that can be transferred from one substrate to another, and that the very concept of identity is inseparable from the embodied experience of being alive. The debate over digital immortality raises profound philosophical questions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and what it means to be human. Transhumanism, a philosophical and intellectual movement that advocates for the use of technology to enhance human capabilities beyond their natural limits, has embraced the fight against aging as one of its central causes. Transhumanists argue that aging is not an inevitable feature of the human condition, but a disease, a problem to be solved through scientific and technological intervention. They advocate for the development and application of technologies such as genetic engineering, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and brain-computer interfaces to extend human lifespan indefinitely and to enhance human physical and cognitive capacities. The transhumanist vision of a post-aging future is both exhilarating and unsettling. It raises questions about equity, as life-extending technologies would likely be expensive and initially available only to the wealthy. It raises questions about overpopulation and resource depletion. It raises questions about the meaning of life in a world without natural death, and it raises questions about the nature of humanity itself. If aging and death are fundamental aspects of the human experience, what happens to our identity and our values when we attempt to transcend them? The ethical questions surrounding life extension are among the most challenging and important in contemporary bioethics. If it becomes possible to significantly extend the human lifespan, who should have access to these technologies? Would they exacerbate existing inequalities, creating a world in which the wealthy live for centuries while the poor continue to die at their natural age? How would societies function if people routinely lived to be 150 or 200 years old? What would happen to institutions such as marriage, career, and retirement? How would the relationship between generations change if great-great-great-grandparents were still alive and active? Would a dramatically extended lifespan lead to greater wisdom and fulfillment, or would it lead to boredom, stagnation, and a loss of the urgency that gives life its savor? These are not merely academic questions. As the science of aging advances and the possibility of significant life extension becomes more plausible, these ethical challenges will demand thoughtful and inclusive public discourse. Religion and spirituality have been central to how human beings across cultures and throughout history have made sense of aging and death. Every major world religion offers a framework for understanding the meaning of suffering, the purpose of life, and the nature of what, if anything, comes after death. Buddhism teaches that suffering, including the suffering of aging, is inherent in existence and that liberation can be found through the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. Christianity offers the promise of eternal life through faith. Islam teaches that this life is a test and a preparation for the afterlife. Hinduism sees aging as part of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth and teaches that the ultimate goal is liberation from this cycle. For many older adults, religious faith and spiritual practice are sources of comfort, meaning, and community. Research has found that religious involvement is associated with better physical health, lower rates of depression, greater social support, and longer lifespan. The mechanisms behind these associations are likely multiple and include the stress buffering effects of faith, the social support provided by religious communities, the promotion of healthy behaviors, and the sense of meaning and purpose that religious belief can provide. The concept of legacy, the desire to leave something of lasting value behind, becomes increasingly important as people age and confront their own mortality. Legacy can take many forms. It can be the children and grandchildren who carry forward one's genes and values. It can be the work one has done, the contributions one has made to one's profession, community, or culture. It can be the relationships one has nurtured, the kindness one has shown, the lives one has touched. It can be the stories one has told, the traditions one has maintained, the lessons one has passed on. The desire to leave a legacy is deeply human, and it serves an important psychological function, providing a sense of continuity and meaning that transcends the boundaries of one's own life. Research on generativity, the concern for establishing and guiding the next generation, has found that people who score high in generativity tend to have greater well-being, a stronger sense of purpose, and a more positive experience of aging. The cultivation of generativity through mentoring, volunteering, creating, and caring is one of the most fulfilling aspects of growing older. Intergenerational connections, the bonds between people of different ages, are vital for the health and well-being of both older and younger individuals and for the health of society as a whole. In many traditional cultures, multiple generations live together, and the transfer of knowledge, skills, and values from old to young was a natural and continuous process. In modern societies, the generations are often more segregated, living in separate households, attending different institutions, and moving in different social circles. This separation can lead to misunderstanding, stereotyping, and a loss of the mutual benefits that intergenerational contact provides. Programs that bring older and younger people together, such as intergenerational mentoring, shared housing, and community service projects, have been shown to reduce ageist attitudes, combat loneliness, improve cognitive function in older adults, and promote empathy and maturity in younger people. The restoration of strong intergenerational connections is not just a social nicety. It is a public health imperative. There is a beauty in aging that is often overlooked in a culture obsessed with youth. The lines on an older person's face are not merely signs of decay. They are the visible record of a life fully lived, of tens of thousands of smiles, of years of squinting into sunlight, of decades of expressions of love, surprise, sorrow, and joy. The silver hair that many older adults bear is not a mark of diminishment, but a crown earned through the passage of time. The slower pace of an older person's walk is not a sign of weakness, but of a body that has carried its owner through decades of work, play, struggle, and achievement. The deeper voice, the weathered hands, the knowing eyes, all of these are markers of experience, resilience, and survival. In a world that often values the new over the enduring, the fast over the steady, and the smooth over the textured, there is a quiet revolution happening among those who are learning to see aging not as a problem to be fixed, but as a natural, meaningful, and even beautiful phase of human existence. The awareness of death, paradoxically, can be one of the most life-affirming aspects of aging. The psychologist Irvin Yalom has written extensively about how the confrontation with mortality can serve as an awakening, a catalyst for living more authentically, more fully, and more purposefully. Many older adults report that the awareness of their finite time has made them more appreciative of each day, more selective about how they spend their time, more focused on what truly matters, and more willing to let go of the trivial and the petty. This awareness does not have to be morbid or paralyzing. It can be liberating. It can strip away the illusions and distractions that clutter a younger person's life and reveal the essential core of what it means to be alive. The philosopher Martin Heidegger called this being toward death, the idea that an authentic life requires a full acknowledgement of one's mortality. Far from being a source of despair, the awareness of death can be the very thing that gives life its depth, its urgency, and its preciousness. The future of aging is being shaped by forces that are converging with breathtaking speed. The fields of genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and bioinformatics are generating an unprecedented understanding of the molecular mechanisms of aging. Artificial intelligence is accelerating the discovery of drug targets and therapeutic strategies. Gene editing technologies like CRISPR are making it possible to intervene in the aging process with a precision that was unimaginable a generation ago. Regenerative medicine is developing the tools to repair and replace aged tissues and organs. Senolytic drugs are clearing senescent cells from aged bodies and restoring youthful function in animal models. Epigenetic reprogramming is turning back the biological clocks of cells in laboratory dishes. Clinical trials of anti-aging interventions are underway in humans. The pace of progress is staggering, and while the dream of conquering aging entirely remains distant and uncertain, the prospect of significantly extending health span, of adding not just years to life but life to years, is closer than it has ever been. Yet for all the remarkable advances in science and technology, the most powerful determinants of how well a person ages remain deceptively simple. They are the choices made every day in kitchens and gyms and bedrooms, in conversations with loved ones and moments of quiet reflection. Eating a diet rich in whole, plant-based foods, moving the body regularly and with purpose, sleeping enough and sleeping well, managing stress through meditation, social support, or whatever practice brings calm, maintaining strong, meaningful relationships, engaging the mind with learning, creativity, and challenge, finding and nurturing a sense of purpose. Approaching each day with gratitude, humor, and an openness to experience. These are not glamorous interventions. They will not make headlines in scientific journals or attract billions of dollars in venture capital, but they are, individually and collectively, the most powerful tools any human being possesses for shaping the trajectory of their aging. The story of human aging is, in the end, the story of being human. It is a story of extraordinary resilience, of cells and organs and systems that carry us through decades of life despite an unrelenting barrage of damage and decline. It is a story of adaptation, of the brain and the body finding new ways to function even as old capacities fade. It is a story of loss, of the gradual relinquishment of abilities and people and possibilities that once seemed permanent. And it is a story of discovery, of the wisdom and clarity and depth that can emerge only through the passage of time. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every creak of a joint tells a part of this story. Every memory, every lesson learned, every relationship nurtured adds another chapter. We live in a remarkable moment in human history. For the first time, we have the scientific tools and the accumulated knowledge to truly understand why we age and perhaps to change the course of the process. The next few decades will almost certainly bring breakthroughs that will reshape our understanding of what it means to grow older. Some of these breakthroughs will be technological, others will be social and cultural. Together, they will transform the experience of aging for future generations in ways we can only begin to imagine. But even as we look to the future with hope and anticipation, it is worth pausing to honor the profound beauty of the process as it unfolds in the present. Every older person walking down a street, tending a garden, reading to a grandchild, or sitting quietly with their memories is a living testament to the resilience of the human organism and the richness of the human spirit. They carry within them decades of experience, hard-won wisdom, and a perspective on life that can only be gained through the patient accumulation of years. Aging is not a disease to be cured. It is not a battle to be won. It is a journey, the longest and most transformative journey a human being can take. And while the destination is the same for all of us, the path each person walks is uniquely their own. The science of aging can illuminate that path, can make it smoother and longer and more comfortable. But the meaning of the journey, the joy and the sorrow and the wonder of it, that is something each person must discover for themselves. As we bring this documentary to a close, consider this. The very fact that you are here, watching, listening, thinking, is itself a triumph of the aging process. Every cell in your body has been shaped by billions of years of evolution, refined and optimized by the most powerful force in the history of life on Earth, the force of natural selection acting over geological time. You are the latest expression of an unbroken chain of life that stretches back to the very origins of existence. Every one of your ancestors survived long enough to pass their genes to the next generation. Every one of them aged and most of them died, and yet life continued. It always continues. That is the ultimate lesson of aging, not that we decline, not that we diminish, not that we fade, but that life endures, that the torch is passed, that every ending contains within it the seeds of a new beginning. And that the human capacity for love, for learning, for growth, and for meaning does not diminish with the years. If anything, it deepens. This is the story of human aging. It is your story. It is all of our stories, and it is still being written.